qui per presentare il prossimo evento. Il nostro ospite ci parlerà di mediocrazia, che è anche il titolo del saggio che ha pubblicato ed è disponibile in Italia presso Neri Pozza e che ha ottenuto un grande successo. È un saggio che, come lascia intuire il titolo, parla dei mediocri e della mediocrità e di come la mediocrità sia diventata un valore necessario per sopravvivere a questo mondo, un valore che è stato imposto. L'ospite è, come vi dicevo, un filosofo, un professore canadese, insegna scienze politiche all'Università di Montreal, si chiama Alain Deneau, accogliamolo con un applauso. Allora, la prima domanda ha a che fare appunto con la mediocrazia e i mediocri. Quando hanno cominciato a diventare dei vincenti? When mediocre start becoming a winner?
Well, I was interested in my work more on the concept of mediocrity than on mediocres as such. What was interesting for me is how to analyze how organizations nowadays aim to make us mediocres. In a way that, well, mediocrity is not about leveling down or upwards, but niveling averagely. And the idea is to shape every practice's thinking and also taste in an average way. And as we know in Latin languages, as Italian or French, there's a lot of similarities between average and mediocrity. We see medio in Italian and mediocracy, it's related. But there are differences. An average, medio, or la moyenne in French, is about an abstraction. You may think of the average knowledge, the common knowledge Italians have on their own history, or the average way Italians drive a car, or the average way public servant produce data as a report. But in that way, in that point of view, an average is a synthesis. You may consider all kind of behavior to shape this notion of average. Mediocrity is average in a state of embodiment. It's an order to behave directly and as such in the average way. So to think in the average way, to produce in the average way, there's no way to feel guilty about being average. I mean, we're all average in something. The problem is when you're in a structure, in an organization, in a society, when people ask you to behave averagely and nothing else, not having principles, not having ethic, a specific ethic, not having a specific way to think or analyze or develop things, but just remain average. So, and why is it like something middly? It's because in an organization, being mediocre doesn't mean you're bad or you know nothing or you can't evolve in a structure. You have to be on time, you have to be able to fill a form, you have to be able to say hello to the proper person and so on and so forth. It's sometimes very difficult to be mediocre in these organizations. It means a lot of energy and involvement. But the idea is that you're never able in the nowadays organization, it doesn't happen often, to produce something else than what is asked.
Okay. And when everything starts, I mean, when mediocrity starts to become a model.
Well,
you were talking in your book about Industrial Revolution.
Yes. It's a progressive phenomenon. when in the 19th century, in the framework of the Industrial Revolution, the productive apparatus started to ask employees to work in a divided manner, the division of work. We have in mind the modern times presenting Charlie Chaplin working in a very standardized manner. So at that time, it became very important to make workers interchangeable because everything becomes standardized. And with Westphal-Taylor, it was always more accurate. And it became so in the intellectual and symbolic world also, in administrations and bureaucracy. You had in all kind of professional field, you have to think in a unique manner, to raise concept in a unique manner, and now to feel things in a specific manner in order to be receivable in all kind of professional field. And it's a pity in a world where we are facing so many important challenges related to climate change, to ecology, to social inequalities. I mean, we cannot suffer anymore just to manage our life in a very tiny way, just to make sure we please the powerful organizations in order to have a better career, let's say. Okay.
And today we have internet, technology, and social media.
Yeah.
And we often hear about internet as a form of democracy, but of democracy of our way of thinking. Yeah. So, do you think that the social media, Facebook, Twitter, and the internet, my question is it a weapon to preserve our original thought, or it's something that will unify our thoughts and encourage to be mediocre?
Yeah. Well, it would be an error to talk about technique, whatever the techniques are, as a political program, let's say, or as something substantial. I mean, a technique is a tool, and a tool is always relevant or not with respect to who use it. I mean, if you use internet for pedophilia or for political progress, you use the tool in so different ways that there are no way to connect them. So the question, of course, is what do you do with that tool, with that technique? But if you raise things so, it's also important to study and to analyze the way a tool affects the mental process. Because it's not, even though it's only a tool, let's say, it's not indifferent on ways these tools affect culture. I mean, we don't think the same ways when churches were in the center of the social gathering than when we had television and now internet. Of course, it affects the ways we have to think. And as Marshall McLuhan put it, media is a message in a way. So media affect the way we think, the way we memorize things, the way we analyze things, because throughout medias, we organize our thoughts. And the problem nowadays with internet and social medias is that they are incentive for expression, but not really for reading deep text. And I think that the way to resist to mediocrity is to read books, authors that offer readings that are deep, analytic, and that suppose time, patience. I mean, you cannot have the equivalent of Karl Marx, Capital, in 140 characters.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about politics. And nowadays politicians use very much the social media. And we have a clear example with Trump. Many people say that Donald Trump is a symbol, an icon of mediocrity. But I mean, can we say that in his case, mediocrity is a talent? I mean, he has been able to recognize maybe a need of mediocrity in all the American people, in this world.
Well, I would say that notwithstanding the content of the political programs of Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, I mean, Hillary Clinton was the most mediocre figure because she was totally averagely. I mean, it was about embodiment of the average. And Trump is a bit like Clinton with respect to economy, liberalization, the role of corporations in the globalization, the domination of capital on workers, and so on and so forth, but in a more rude manner, in a more violent manner. And it's interesting when we see how Trump behaved, that he's maybe the first one that took over the social medias and use it in an advantageous way for him. When we studied the Arab Spring, the Occupy movement, a lot of people said, wow, how social medias are progressive, actually, as a tool, because they help people to gather, to raise political issues, to organize the demonstrations. Without social medias, we wouldn't have had the Arab Spring and so on. We had a lot of comments on that, and it was sociologically relevant to talk about the medias that way, but now we know that, I can't recall his name, it's Robert Mercer. He's a counselor of Trump. I mean, he's one of his main advisor. And he's a specialist of big data. And he was able for Trump's political campaign to make a very effective use of what people like on Facebook. And he's one of those who thinks that if you're able with an algorithm to know what a Facebook user did like 150 times, the algorithm is able to shape a profile of that user more accurate than what the intimate partner of that user knows about him or her. So, because when we're on internet, we express a part of ourselves that our friends or our relationship won't always know in a so broad way. And he says also that when you use internet 300 times to express yourself, whether you like or not an idea, an opinion, an object, a product, the algorithm is able to shape a profile of you better than the one you could shape yourself. I mean, it knows, it's able to see you in a deeper way. And that way, the Trump organization was able to send emails and advertisement and all kind of messages to Facebook users that did express their support of Bernie Sanders, for instance, and to send an accurate advertisement to these persons so that they would vote for a program, for a pathological guy that wasn't at all the people wanted at the White House. But with advertisement, it was possible to do so. And we're at a time where these tools are used to manipulate very broadly people without any personal, I mean, without any employees. You don't need people to do that when you have the good instruments.
Okay. And there is a part in your book where you talk about the superhero Superman as an icon of mediocrity, because we have Clark Kent, who is a very common person, and then we have Superman, the opposite of Clark Kent. And this figure is from Clark Kent to Superman. In your book, you write that there is not a right development of the character.
Yeah.
So can you explain this part?
Well, I'll quote once more Marshall McLuhan, who talked about that character of Superman in his sociological work. And, well, basically he said that the main character of Superman isn't Superman at all, it's Clark Kent. I mean, if you can't size who Clark Kent is, you don't understand the purpose of that character, by the way, built by teenagers. So so it says a lot. Well, and he says, well, basically that Clark Kent is maybe not an idiot, but someone who's incapable. I mean, he's sociologically unable to do whatever he would like to because he's stuck in so big structures. As an intellectual, as a reporter, but he could be also a scientist. I mean, he's involved in so huge structures that the only thing he can, imagine as a way to express the idea of emancipation is to imagine himself being as big as these structures. And the idea of justice related to this fantasy of character being strong and the strongest of the world and be able to fly and is that you don't need any thinking. I mean, you have a hero that knows what justice is. In his world, there is no complexity. Everything is is out of any kind of debate. Everything is obvious. Yeah. So so you have no place for intellectuality. So he's only supporting the power. He's only supporting the establishment. He's only supporting ways things have been fashioned by powers, by the establishment, as a fantasy, because in reality, the story is only about a guy that feels useless in the world.
Okay. And in your book, you say that mediocrity is something that covers all the world, not only the job, not only the politician, but also the art. So can you explain us how the art is becoming mediocre in this world?
Well, the idea is that once again, we don't have to feel guilty because one day or another we cook in the average way, we think the average way, we have the average data on an issue. The idea is, why do we feel that we could do something better on an ethic level, on a intellectual level, on a practical level, on a political level, and we feel that there's a lot of pressure to make sure that we remain mediocre. This is the main idea. And when you have like engineers that work very hard to build objects that will have to be replaced in a few months because the idea of technology is to build bad objects. I mean, you see that you're involved in a mediocrity, in a system that wants you to be bad. When you have in the pharmaceutical industry people that develop drugs to help people with money to fight against false disease. You're in front of a system that doesn't work properly. When you have professors, researchers at the university that don't see themselves as being involved in in topics useful for the society, but only related to clients that buy results to show that the oil industry isn't polluting, or that the sugar isn't bad for our health, because they need such data as to make representations in front of the, let's say, the Congress in the US or wherever it can occur. You're in front of a system that is leveling, not down, nor down, neither upwards, but in a very ideological manner. And we had a president in France elected recently who comes from the banking system. He presents his political party as being an enterprise, I mean a political corporation. In the electors are clients, and you see all the concepts we used to have in the political field, being changed by a vocabulary related to the good governance, to all these concepts related to management, and it's a way to become intellectually very poor.
So we live in a world that is leveling everything. So politics, art, the educational systems, the jobs. What is the medicine to return original?
Well, the idea, are we able to think by ourselves? Notwithstanding the expectations of powerful organizations. This is the main issue. Whether or not we use internet, whether or not we're in this or that field, are we able to think by ourselves what's good and what isn't good, what's appropriate and what isn't, with respect to principles, with respect to convictions, with respect to a social involvement that is taking into account considerations and ideas that are bigger than what organizations want us to do, that is being a tool in their own infrastructures. And this is the idea. And of course, what I would be supporting is reading books related to tradition we have in our culture, which is the critical thinking. Critical thinking since Gracian, Marx, the Frankfurter School, Michel Foucault, and authors that help us to see what is the ideology, what powerful organization want to put us directly in our brain, what words they want us to use to be sure that we behave in the way they want us to have, and how do we build other ways to think so that we will be really out of the box being also the corporation.
Okay. Just one last question. This tendency of leveling everything, do you think is something that comes from our society, our political system, or maybe it's the destiny of humankind? I mean.
What's true, since we talk here about medias and technology, it's true that technology helps powerful organizations that use it to foster averagely behaviors, I mean mediocrity, because it's easier to have the same message addressed to a whole society, within a society where medias are important, than in a world where you have more free space on a technological point of view. And it's also true with respect to bureaucracy and administration. So I would say that in front of those medias and tools we have to see what are the advantages of these elements we have now in our society, but also what are the dangers that we face when we see this technology being used by powerful organizations that wish that we remain mediocres.
So, thank you very much.
Thank
Quindi
you.
il messaggio è quello di usare i mezzi che ci dà la nostra contemporaneità, la nostra tecnologia, ma usarli con saggezza e con originalità. Grazie a Alain Deneau.
Thank you.